And it's interesting because you talked about, it's hard to leave America because America is still the king of innovation, and this is where people want to come. And there's a cultural tradition of celebrating people that do great things.
Historically.
Why do you say that? Because this, I think, is why I'm bringing it up.
This has changed.
Tell me about it.
Well, I think that this disparity in wealth that arises from successful entrepreneurism, and the majority of Americans, if you look on an inflation-adjusted basis over the last 10 years, have not seen their incomes rise. And so going back to my original point, happiness is driven by changes in income. So when we got social media, look, there was always media, but now there's like so much more access. I get to see what Kanye West is doing every day. I get to see the plane that Kim Kardashian is flying in. I get to see what Justin Bieber, like how much he's spending on his new Lamborghini. Like there's an element now of insight that I have as a citizen that I never had. And we always had ultra wealthy people in capitalist societies. There were always people who have outsized returns. Someone who figures out how to make a golden goose can start making more golden geese and more golden geese before anyone else figures out how to make a golden goose. And so they get this outsized return. They get this incredible outcome in a capitalist system. But I always look at Jeff Bezos because he's like so many people have such a negative view of the guy. But the guy gave us this ability to get whatever we want tomorrow at a fraction of the cost of what I was paying even at Walmart.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Like the technology and the innovation and the investment that they made, they kept reinvesting every dollar they made. And people thought they were crazy because they were never making money. And he's like, I'm going to keep investing. And he created this infrastructure that has unlocked value for everyday consumers, that people can buy stuff and have access to a toy for their kids for $8 and it shows up on your doorstep tomorrow. Or lower priced food, or like this thing that you wouldn't otherwise be able to buy because no stores in your neighborhood sell it. This incredible unlock in prosperity. That's a definition of prosperity for individuals. But he's bemoaned for having $160 billion and hanging out on a yacht. Like Bilyeu said, we should be celebrating this dude. He's a superhero, what he did. What he did if what he did wasn't valuable, he wouldn't be worth $160 billion. There was no cronyism. This guy didn't go in and steal wealth. He didn't go in and like steal a mine and pull all the diamonds out of the mine and, prevent the local people from accessing the diamonds. This guy built a business. He innovated. And that's what has happened countless times in the United States over the last 250 years. And the reality is that individuals don't necessarily pay attention because now we're all used to Amazon. We're all used to our iPhones. So the change in benefit we're getting, it's taken for granted, I think. But my income isn't going up as an individual. I'm not making more money, but this guy's got $200 billion. That's unfair. I think the world is made up of haves and have-nots. Everyone thinks that they're a have-not relative to some other have. And everyone is a have to some other have-not. That simple fact is what drives all social policy, all of politics, all of the economy, everything. Because it goes back to my point about desire. If I'm a have-not relative to someone else's have, I see what they have that I don't have. I want to tax them. I want to get them. I want to compete with them in the market if I am an entrepreneur. I want to go get the market share they have. I want to get a politician to take their stuff away from them. And if I'm a have, and there's a have-not trying to get me, I want to vote for a politician that's going to protect my assets. And I want to vote for a politician that's going to give me freedom to continue to have stuff. And I'm going to have conflict with the person that is a have-not that says that they want to have what I have, because it's my thing. It's not their thing. I worked hard for it. I deserve it. So that dynamic is what drives all of this. And I think that it goes back to the point earlier about government spending. The have-nots vote to get what the haves have or to take stuff away from the haves. And then the government is the agent by which we can all accumulate our power to exercise that action. That's where government programs come from. And the haves are viewed as bad by the have-nots, particularly as it relates to individuals with wealth, when individuals are not seeing their income grow. And so today, unfortunately, I think successful entrepreneurs are cast in a negative light generally. Elon has gotten very socially active. He's got very politically loud, but he's an incredible entrepreneur who's built these amazing cars that everyone wants. And he's got this platform for communication that he wants everyone to be able to access without restriction, which is unique. And his entrepreneurism is not celebrated. It's viewed as a threat. It's viewed as something this guy has stuff. He has power, is what politicians see as power with this open platform. He has success with his car company that the other car companies don't have. So they want to pass legislation to hurt him. He has wealth that individuals don't have. So they hate him. He's viewed as a right winger because he doesn't agree with my policy. And he has the ability and the megaphone to be able to say that because he's wealthy. So he's negative. He's an evil character now, largely. So I think that's what we've kind of seen this. And if you go back to the 50s, I mean, look, throughout American history, we've had like some folks that we've bemoaned, but there was a lot of cronyism in the early days. I don't think there's as much cronyism today. I think that there's just a lot of have-not dynamics that are driving this.
Okay, so how does that play out? Because this strikes me as something that if it goes too far, Lenin, the bad guy, had a very useful quote, which is, if you give me one generation of young people, I will completely change the world. Meaning that whatever values and beliefs you inculcate them with will completely become their entire worldview. And so if we raise not one, not two, three, four, I don't know how many generations of people that vilify the successful, well, then people aren't going to aspire to be the successful. So how do you think this plays out?
I could argue both sides. So I could say that we head down a socialist tunnel if we're not careful, where we want to make sure that everyone has equal outcome, which is what Bilyeu warns against. When the reality is equal opportunity, everyone has access to participate is what really drives success and drives equality. And as long as there are some young people that will step out and build businesses and innovate and build new technology and participate, we do have enough of that spirit in the United States still. So I'm very optimistic about like US entrepreneurism. I could be worried about the loud voice of the mass saying we need to revolt and return to a equal outcome. We need to get to an equal outcome society, and redistribute all the wealth and redistribute all the assets and redistribute all the access and so on. But I think that there's still enough young people that succeed through entrepreneurism that they can become beacons and lights for the, for making sure that folks don't fall that way. We need to shine light and support and applaud. So I don't have a great answer for you on this because I think you could see things go either way. I mean, I think generally I have this worry that we're at this very, and this is a broader scope point, that we're at this very weird like intersection of choosing between like the Dark Ages and the Enlightenment, which I've said on my show, like, do we want to stop innovation because we're fearful of technology, because we're fearful of progress, because we're fearful of the downside, because we don't like entrepreneurs, because we don't want people to accumulate wealth, because we hate success, because we want the government to do stuff for us and not individual companies? That's the Dark Ages. And if that wins the day...
Why would that be the Dark Ages?
So, well, I'll just say another thing about this. One of the ways that this gets supported is the absence of empiricism, fact, data. Because as Bilyeu points out, all the data shows that entrepreneurism, that capitalism is better than socialism. He said this, the data is there, economists will show you, you're not going to compel someone that socialism is better unless you leave out all the data that supports that capitalism is better, okay? So you have to have an absence of information. I can wax a little too philosophical here because it ends up going on too much of a tangent, but I do think that there's this element of human beliefs that allow us to do incredible things. Like we have to come together and believe in something as a group to accomplish a mission, to build something. Like we all get together and like, let's build a house. I believe in the vision of that house, so I'm gonna build that house with you. It takes more than one person to build that house. We all have to work together. So the belief allows us to accomplish the building of the house. But that also then opens up room for humans to believe in things that aren't empirical, that aren't supported by data, that maybe will take us down a different path. And so we can believe that the data is right and good, or we can ignore the data and believe in something else. And so I do see a lot of alarming behavior, things that worry me, particularly on media and from politicians, where they say things that aren't true and then people believe them. That's what happened in the Dark Ages. And it, like, whether it's the monarchy or the church at the time or whatever group was in power, they told people something that they were told to believe that allowed them to maintain their status. And then we ended up saying, no, the sun revolves around the earth. The earth doesn't revolve around the sun, despite the data that this crazy guy is talking about. Ignore the crazy guy. His data's wrong. What we're telling you is right. That's the Dark Ages. We ignore empiricism, we ignore fact, and we don't make progress. And the Enlightenment is that we get into a more positioned rational thought mode where let's use data to make decisions. Let's look at the performance of a government program to decide whether or not we want to keep doing it. Let's look at the results of this experiment. Let's make sure that data guides us. Let's make sure that we have a principled rational thought about discussion about what we should do. And that's not what we hear from politicians. I don't hear anyone standing up there. I mean, I think Vivek probably did the best job of this. Like, he actually came out and gave facts about and figures about the size of some of these government programs and what they were doing and the success or failure of them. Millet has shown this. There's a world where we embrace technology, where we say we're not going to be fearful of loss, but we're going to embrace the risk because the upside is worth it. We can go to the moon. We can go to Mars. We can cure cancer. Some people will die, but we can do it. We just have to be willing to do it. We can look at the data and iterate and be successful. Or this stuff is bad. This technology is bad. This idea of capitalism is bad. The celebration of the entrepreneur is bad. And I think that's like this moment, this crossroads that we are at. And I don't think it's like we just go one way or the other. I think we have that choice every day. But I think we should really take a hard look at are we launching new science, new technology, supporting innovation, supporting entrepreneurship, supporting free markets, and allowing the individual that has the brilliance and the ability to narrate and the ability to bring people together to succeed? Or are we saying, let's stymie that, let's shut it down, let's use false facts and falsehoods and the absence and regulation and all this other stuff to kind of keep things from progressing? And we have this moment where there's this crazy set of things happening right now in science. Most people don't understand it. They don't get how crazy it is. But we are understanding how to reverse aging in every cell in our body. And there are several multi-billion-dollar private companies doing this. There are several multi-billion-dollar private companies building fusion reaction systems to create unlimited energy at effectively free production cost coming from ocean water. Either of those two things happen, humanity's trajectory changes completely. We could live forever or whatever. We could live for hundreds of years. We could have infinitely free energy. And going back to your earlier point, with infinitely free energy, I could actually make gold out of dirt. So that system does start to exist when energy costs decline. We have AI. We have this ability for all of human knowledge to be encapsulated in a device that I can keep in my pocket. And it can answer any question for me and do anything for me using knowledge work. And I can spend all my time pursuing my vision of the future and creative pursuits and things that I'm interested in doing without all the tedium of dealing with data and dealing with knowledge and dealing with labor, because machines can do that for me now. There's all these kind of moments that we're kind of just coming up this curve right now. Yeah, and every one of them, there's an effort to stymie them with regulation. There's an effort to denounce the technology as being too risky. It could kill us all. It's too dangerous. We shouldn't be doing fusion. We shouldn't be doing AI. We shouldn't be doing, or we need to be doing it carefully, which means the government has to come in and control and regulate it, which means that all of the innovation is going to be stymied. That's the Dark Ages, right? That's where we miss out on all of this upside. And I think we're not accustomed to taking risk anymore as we were when we were pioneers in the West in the United States, because the people that were pioneers in the West in the United States had nothing to lose. They had nothing. They had a backpack, a satchel, and a horse, and a wagon, and an ox, and they made their way Oregon Trail style. And they got a piece of land and they built something. Today we have so much to lose. I got 2 cars and a suburban driveway. I've got, my kids, I've got my IRA. I've got stuff. So I don't know if I want to take the risk of dying from this new thing. I don't know if I want to go to Mars. Like, going to Mars is cool, but I don't know.
Interesting. I think that part of what's at play here is ideas. So I think ideas, what people will often think of as culture, and momentum, those are the two things that really matter. And so when I am a default optimistic person, and I'm becoming a little bit more optimistic in the narrow, acute moment that we're living in now. But if you had asked me a year ago, I was getting pretty pessimistic about the direction we were going from an authoritarian perspective.
Yeah.
Elon didn't own Twitter yet. People didn't seem to want any freedom of speech. We were just coming out of COVID where I thought people acted like psychopaths. It was just bananas in terms of people giving up all of their freedom in exchange for safety. It was a very strange time. And when I think about the ideas that have people in their grips, the ideas are not necessarily the ideas of old. So I will say that he's a very controversial figure now, but it's somebody I have tremendous respect for, which is Winston Churchill. Mm-hmm. Now, he grew up a man of means, but despite that, he was so in the grips of a set of ideas around the greatness of England and Britannia that he was so... For people that don't know his story, he has a really fascinating moment in World War I where he fights and fights and fights to get into politics, finally gets into politics, gets assigned to, I forget the name of the place, but it was a naval station. And he ends up messing up massively. And it completely destroys his career. And everybody, this is World War I, remember, the guy that's later going to be famous for World War II is like, I'm done. I no longer have a career. I've made an extremely big public mistake. But he doesn't go wallow in it. Instead, he goes, I want to immediately be put on the front lines of World War I, and I'm going to earn my way back into the government. And so they put him on the front lines of arguably one of the most gruesome, bloody wars ever. This is trench warfare. And he said to his mother, it matters so much to me to have a reputation for physical courage, meaning I'm not brave at a desk where, it's like quite easy to be brave. I'm getting shot at and I'm brave. And so he used to do like all these like really dangerous, they were just like routine sort of you walk the perimeter thing. And people didn't want to go with him because when he would get shot at, he would just stand there. And people are like, what are you doing? And he's like, by the time they've shot at you, you either got hit or you didn't. And so he's like, now the danger is, is past. And so he just had this attitude of like, I'm not going to be cowed. I know what we're here for. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to lead. I'm going to show people what it's about. That is a guy who had everything to lose. But what he was focused on was somehow, some way, the idea got planted in his mind that what mattered was self-respect. And when I look back in history and look very much, these could be the blinders, the rose-colored glasses that I wear about my own life. But so I grew up middle to lower middle class. And my parents were just like, all right, we can't give you money. In fact, I graduated college with debt. Can't help you there. But my dad was obsessed with kids, you're going to learn work ethic. Mm-hmm. And so from the time I was 12, I worked in a door factory, then a paint factory, then a paint warehouse, like just doing all these horrendously physical labor jobs that I did not enjoy in the slightest. And my dad just kept saying, but you're going to know how to work when other people don't. And you need to respect that. And you need to understand how that's going to serve you. And so, of course, that ends up, I remember one of the earliest, we got a video of this, but it somehow got lost to the sands of time. Quest starting nascent, of course, everything is hard. And I had learned how to drive a forklift back in the paint warehouse days. And when all of our equipment showed up, we realized, oh my God, we don't have a forklift. We have no way to get this equipment off this truck. And we're all like, oh, everyone else was looking around saying, how are we going to do this? And I was like, guys, I'm actually a certified forklift driver. And they're like, what? And so we borrowed a forklift and I was able to get all of our gear off the truck. And I looked in the camera and I said, Dad, wax on, wax off. You told me that all these skills would come in handy one day. And so, but that set of ideas drove me. And it was the desire to get good at things that I wasn't good at, to earn a reputation for being the hardest worker in every room that I was in. Yeah. And so all of those things then end up paying off. And then I remember when I first got on camera, I was telling people all the time, hey, you should go out, work for free, learn something, exchange, instead of trying to optimize for money, optimize for knowledge and connections. Yes. And I would just get lit up. Oh, Tom, like these people are just being taken advantage of. Of course you say that because you're rich. And I was like, hold on. Do you know how I got rich? Like I wasn't trying to maximize my dollar. I was trying to maximize knowledge and connections. And so I can feel that a spirit has changed in some way, and that people are no longer in the grips of the same ideas that I was raised with, that it was just the water in the 80s to be the hardest working person in the room, to strive for more, to like pick your biggest dream and go for it, to celebrate people who were successful. And to like my whole life until it actually happened, I was the temporarily embarrassed millionaire, right? Yeah, I'm broke today, but I'm not going to be broke forever. And so that whole spirit has been exchanged for what you laid out earlier. Yeah.
Like people just expect.
Correct.
So that worries you?
That worries me to no end. And my default stance is that this is a pendulum that swings, and it only swings based on pain. And it will keep going in one direction until it is absolutely intolerable, and we will swing back.
Right.
And the reason that I do this show is that what you need is not just pain, you need pain plus an idea. And so when you have a good idea, hopefully, if you have somebody that can articulate that idea well, that you don't have to be in as much pain before you change course. But yes, when I look at Trump, Biden as the nominees for 2024, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a group of people who need enough pain to go, this is ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's also like, you could ask yourself, what do we celebrate? Like in the early 20th century, mid 20th century, we celebrated people working hard. We celebrated entrepreneurs and scientists having breakthroughs. If I ask you the question today, what do you think we celebrate today?
Victimhood, unfortunately.
Victimhood?
You've had it hard.
Celebrity?
Yeah, but that gets a bit of a mixed bag. But yes.
So I think that's the indicator for you. And if that's what we pronounce, if that's what we celebrate, that's what we manifest. The problem is, like, I think the folks who do get recognized, like it used to be movie stars who were like great success, business tycoons were lauded. Now it's a celebrity who did a lot on Instagram. And the problem is that's out of reach for everyone. Like that's what everyone aspires to, is everyone, like I think that was the number one thing out of a recent survey coming out of high school, was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Social media influencer. Because that's what we celebrate. And I think that the challenge then is like, well, people that are building businesses in other ways, people that are making stuff, scientists, it becomes a very hard thing to kind of relate, very obvious things as to why we're not really seeing people pursue those interests, because it's not really what we celebrate as much. So,
yeah. So my hope is that we can begin to celebrate some creation, innovation, risk-taking, people that are bold, success, people that pull it off. Like when I look at Elon Musk, I get it. Like I get why some people don't like his politics. Fair enough. I mean, it's there's a bit of a sort of boyish troll nature to his his ongoings on X. But at the same time, he is the greatest entrepreneur of our generation, as far as I know. There might be somebody that's done even more, but holy hell. And I'm thinking of Bezos right alongside of him. Yeah. Bezos is amazing, but when I look at the way that Elon has been able to replicate it in just wildly different companies, it's pure insanity. And doing it from an engineering standpoint is really, really breathtaking.